Hi, I'm John Byrne, editor of Poets and Quants with Handicapping Your MBA Odds. With me is the always witty, entertaining, and highly informative Sandy Kreisberg, a leading MBA admissions consultant and the founder of HBSGuru.com. He is a guru. Well, we're here to handicap the odds of an MBA candidate who wants to get into one of the world's elite MBA programs. And as we do in our highly popular columns on Poets and Quants, we'll analyze whether a real-life applicant has what it takes to either get into a big school or whether, in fact, that person might be dinged. Too bad. Today, we're taking a look at Mr. Intelligence. He is a military intelligence analyst, actually an officer. He has led over 100 soldiers in cyber operations. He scored a 700 on his GMAT. He has a GPA of what? 4.0, valedictorian of his West Point class. He was captain of his fencing team, a team that went on to capture the national championship. So, Sandy, what do you think?
I think what we got here is a very impressive guy, military guy, valedictorian, Big Brother, Special Olympics, the fencing team. So I think he's got a very good chance of getting into both Harvard and Stanford. But what I'd like to do is use him as a kind of test case and go through his assets one by one for people who don't have, who are not valedictorians.
Start with a GMAT. 700 is not that great a score.
700 is acceptable for Harvard Business School if everything else is solid, okay? What we don't have are their splits. What Harvard likes is to see, and most schools like, is to see 80% on both sides.
Verbal and quant.
Yeah, the verbal and quant side. That's right. As a rule, if you're the valedictorian of an Ivy, a near Ivy, a service academy, you stand a very good chance. That is something business schools respect. This is important about military applicants. Business schools do not really know how to appraise a military career. This is frustrating if you're in the military.
Now, why is that?
Because they don't know the difference between being in a combat zone. They don't know the difference between what this guy does running a cyber lab. They don't know how people who graduate from service academies get assignments. I think if you spoke to people on the day that assignments came out at a service academy, they could give you a pretty good idea of what those assignments were.
Right.
Not many people know that. Not many people can see behind the military career.
So is that to the advantage or the disadvantage of the applicant?
What it does is for military applicants, unfortunately, it makes your stats count a lot more. I think what you find with military applicants is you could sort them out by some matrix of GMAT and GPA. And that's the reality. Whether it's unfortunate or not is up for grabs.
Right.
And this guy, I believe, is going to get into Harvard Business School. The only way he would not do that is if he blew the interview, which does happen. And that's something we can do a sidebar on about how to blow or not blow your Harvard interview.
Right.
This guy, if you changed a few things, could be questionable. If he weren't the valedictorian, if he had a 700 GMAT, if he were captain of the fencing team, and if he were involved in Big Brothers and the Special Olympics, and they were unable to get some bead on his military career, he could wind up being beaten out by other military candidates. What he's got going for him is the valedictorian, and that's the trump card. That's what's saving this guy. Here's an interesting comparison. At service academies at West Point, there's a person called the first captain who is not the valedictorian. The first captain, my understanding of it, is someone who is the brigade leader, the leader of the 4,000 person brigade.
Right. Huh.
You would think, here's an interesting test. Given the choice between taking the first captain or the valedictorian, what do you think Harvard Business School would prefer?
Well, they're hung up on leadership, so maybe they want the first captain.
Here's a dirty little secret.
We like dirty little secrets.
Yes, well, it's hard to judge leadership. First captain is a leadership position. I believe the first captain is going to get in. I believe the valedictorian is going to get in. If you put a gun to someone's head, they might go with the valedictorian on the theory that they understand what the valedictorian does and they don't understand what the first captain does. If you're a military candidate, it's difficult to show leadership. A lot of candidates have leadership that schools have a hard time processing, and their default is to just go with the statistics. It's an unfortunate reality of military candidates.
Even though a military candidate would have great stories to tell, in this case, he's led 100 soldiers in cyber operations, which is sort of a cool, high-tech area, and certainly
I don't
the
know.
future of security.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I don't know what leading someone in cyber operations means.
Yeah.
What I imagine is a bunch of guys in a dark room looking at computers, okay? So that is not the iconic leadership that you suppose, to see from a military guy.
Right.
This guy, because he was the valedictorian, because he's in cyber stuff, my guess is they assigned him cyber stuff because he was good at it, okay? If you twist, this guy is great, and I believe he's going to get in. But just for the sake of being provocative and putting out a hypo, if you twisted the dials a little on this guy, you could go, you know something? This guy's a little bit of a nerd, okay? His grades are almost too good. He's interested in cyber stuff. This is where, and if he didn't have the fencing, which does get him back into the normal mode, that could be a possibly dangerous profile. That's my point about this guy. There's another issue with this guy. This guy says he wants to spend his career in the military.
Right, that's his goal.
I don't know how many military applicants say that. That's a question I'd love to have answered. How many military guys in presenting to Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, top schools say that they want to go back to the military?
And is that good, or should you be saying you want to work for McKinsey or Goldman?
I think you want to say you want to work for McKinsey and Goldman because the schools believe that experience could help the military.
Right. And they can place you.
Yeah.
And there's not a problem. Well, one other thing, can you clear up about military candidates? You hear a lot of elite business schools saying we love them, we want more of them. But is that really true? Or is there military and then there's military? You know what I mean?
Show me the money. I think there are fewer service academy graduates at Harvard now than there were 10 years ago. If you look at the changing demographics, they've expanded certain groups, and they haven't expanded the class. One of the groups that got impacted by that are service academy graduates. And I'm not sure of this, but military, people who are ROTC as well.
And what about enlisted people? That's a different category for an elite business school, right?
D. Leopold, calling D. Leopold, could you tell us how many enlisted, could you please tell us how many enlisted military people have attended Harvard Business School?
Now, D. Leopold is the
youth wants
director
to know.
Of Harvard Business School.
Yes, I'd like to know.
You think it's a rare person who would get into Harvard being an enlisted rank and file military person?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if that's a damning admission on their part. I think a lot of enlisted men don't have college degrees, for instance.
Right.
So, but there are not too many enlisted men at, I would take a chance again at Harvard, Stanford, or Wharton.
Okay.
And I'd like to know.
So let's go to the odds. So for Mr. Intelligence, the odds for him getting to Harvard Business School is what?
Plus 60% plus.
Well, that's pretty high for you.
Well, that's as high as I go. The only thing that could happen to this guy is that he blows the interview.
Okay, Stanford.
Stanford's always trickier, but I'd say this guy's chances are 50% or more. What he's got to do is just on the essay part of the application, he's got to present himself in some thoughtful, humanistic way and say, what matters to him is, learning from role models or how his family background has impacted him. He's got to isolate certain crossroads in his life where he's been able to grow.
So the other thing he asked is, what other schools should he consider? And immediately what came to my mind was Darden at Virginia. Would you have that on the list?
Darden's known to be military friendly.
Right.
They're known to be in the second tier of selectivity below Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton. I think this guy might feel comfortable at Darden, but my motto.
Yeah, you go into the best you can.
Prestige counts. Yes.
Right. And you're giving him 60-plus odds at Harvard, 50% plus odds at Stanford.
I think if this guy applied to Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton,
he's going to get into one of the three easily. If you're interested in having your odds assessed by Sandy, go to poetsandquants.com, look for our handicapping series, and leave your profile in the comments. We'll get Sandy to take a look. Meantime, good luck to our candidate, and good luck to you.